Hello, today is been a long time here with you, and I'm glad once again to be here and to bring you a new topic. For the past 3 weeks, we had been working on our triple action program, which we had as a one-day program on the International Day of Indigenous Sign Languages, IDSL 2020. So the TAP program took us a whole lot of time to prepare. So I had to go on break on Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices. I hope you watched our Triple Action program project video. If you did not, please go to our YouTube channel and try and watch that program. It is awesome. So, how have you been doing? I have been great and awesome. All right, today I bring you a new topic, and today we'll be discussing the topic sign languages in Africa. I want you to know that this topic, I had discussed it at the beginning of my discussions in this program, and I talked about it briefly, but this time around I want to get down with it, and it is going to enable us to look at the varieties of sign languages in Africa, sign language situations in Africa, and we will also look at sign languages from one country to the other, and probably touch a bit of the grammar of some of the sign languages we know. You know, from the beginning I said it that we're not going to be touching the grammar of sign languages yet, because whenever we get into there, we are really getting into the real core sign linguistics. So, but anyway, today I come up with a topic, sign languages in Africa, and I want you to stay tuned. Don't go nowhere. All right, this is the Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices, that is brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. And today our topic is sign languages in Africa. Sign languages in Africa. We're going to be looking at the different sign language situations in different African countries, and that is going to help us to understand what is going on amongst deaf children, deaf adults, deaf schools, and other different communities. All right. So I'm going to be starting to let us know some of the things we already know about sign languages in Africa. The discussion I had from the beginning of this series of Indigenous Hands, Indigenous Voices, I talked about some of these things, and I want to recall them. So we know that Africa has rich linguistic culture, and this includes both signed and spoken languages. We also know that many indigenous African sign languages have been in existence long before the colonial time. I mentioned some of these in my early days of discussion here. So Africa contributes to the rich linguistic status of the entire the entire world. Africa contributes to the rich linguistic diversity of the entire world. And so Africa boasts of her linguistic richness. It boasts of her linguistic, varieties, and it doesn't matter whether it is signed or spoken. All right, part of the things we also know we want to re-establish is that deaf education changed the dynamics of sign languages in Africa. Deaf education changed the dynamics of sign language situation in many African countries. And this is because Reverend Andrew Foster came from America to Africa in 1957 and was able to work towards the establishment of deaf education in many African countries, up to 31 of them. Particularly in Nigeria, deaf education had started just like it was in European countries, and they were usually using the oralism method. So the oral method was the method of teaching deaf children as at that time until Andrew Foster came and introduced the then popular total communication method. We also know that deaf education has had some great impact on the sign languages in Africa. Deaf education has had much obvious impact in the deaf communities in Africa, and the impact has been discussed by many scholars in many works they have been doing from different aspects. But I, for one, I like to discuss it in relation to the impact it has had, or the impact it has on the sign languages in Africa, especially the indigenous sign languages, vis-a-vis the impact in the language acquisition of deaf children. So that is also going to be the focus of my discussion today. So the good that deaf education brings to African deaf community, of course, cannot be overemphasized, and we do not attempt in any way try to reduce such impact or the account of what deaf education has brought. So, but nevertheless, we look at how this touches the sign languages of different African countries. And we look at countries that deaf education came or was established fully in line with what Dr. Andrew Foster did. So you look at the countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Gabon, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. I'm going to be looking at the sign language situation in some of these countries as much as I can throughout this series. And so today is the beginning of the topic I tag sign languages in Africa. And the reason I decided to have this discussion today is because of the topics that we discussed during the last International Day of Sign Languages. And if you watch the video of our Triple Action program that was held on the International Day of Sign Languages, you found out that we emphasized on the theme that the WFD prepared for this year's IDSL. And we talked on the importance of national sign languages. And in my speech, I looked at what does national sign language mean to each deaf community that is represented in different countries, and what is the impact of national sign languages to a deaf child in a rural community. And so this is what I looked at. I touched on how a national sign language can be developed through indigenous sign languages. So the importance of this topic to an average indigenous deaf community in Africa is to look at the need to continue to work towards the development of their indigenous sign languages. So the sign languages in different African countries have different status today. But one thing that is important for us to note in this topic and as it goes on is, as much as Africa has rich linguistic varieties, signed or spoken, many African languages, both signed and spoken, have very low status in the entire society in comparison to some other languages like English that I am using for this communication. And part of the reason, of course, we know dates back to colonialism, and we cannot, discuss things about the history of Africa without really having to touch on colonialism, the impact it has upon virtually everything that Africa stands for, the culture, the identity, the language, the politics, the economy, and everything till today. Now, but so on indigenous, hence the indigenous voices, where we talk about sign languages and indigenous sign languages for that matter. So we narrow down our discussion to that effect. And we look at the impact of the presence of indigenous or the absence of indigenous sign languages in different deaf communities and how this affects the growing up of deaf children. All right, so I'm gonna start off as time goes on to pick on each of these countries that I mentioned to get us through what is going on there. I know that that my friend and colleague Mary Edward, who comes from Ghana, discusses Adamorobe Sign Language here, and she is going to resume anytime soon to bring us discussions about Adamorobe Sign Language. And so I'm not going to be discussing the sign language varieties or sign language situation in Ghana because I have a more capable hand with much better information about the sign language situation in Ghana. But I'm going to be I'm going to try my best to look at these other countries. And I say the focus is to look at how much of the indigenous sign languages are in use, and possibly also in relation to the foreign-based sign languages that are in use. Remember, it is not all African countries where deaf education was established by Andrew Foster. There are some other countries that he didn't visit and his work has not had much impact in. So we're also going to be looking at all these together. Beginning from Nigeria, looking at other countries, we are also going to be looking at the status of the deaf people and how much of deaf education is involved in the raising of a deaf child. And I will say that having worked in Nigerian deaf community for over 6 years, we have a very good information about all this, and also are to some extent capable of implying or applying the knowledge we have acquired from Nigerian deaf community to some other countries, being that Nigeria stands a significant position in Africa. So first of all, we need to understand that the population of deaf people in every country matters a lot and plays a role in how much of sign language use that is in that country, on what kind of sign language that is in use in that country. So today, the topic we are to look at from today till as long as this discussion will take us is sign languages in Africa. And our focus is going to be to look at the varieties of sign languages that are in use in different countries. And we are going to be looking at a little bit of how these sign languages work and how much of these sign languages have been in use in deaf education. I will encourage you to follow us through this topic until the end of it, and do not hesitate and do not relent in sharing our videos to people that it will benefit. We are not singing song, we're not dancing dance, we are not entertaining, we are bringing knowledge through the means that we have received the training also. So in indigenous hands, the indigenous voices, we only discuss indigenous sign languages of Africa and bringing them to the social status where other sign languages have thrived. And this is so important for the development of deaf communities in Africa, the development of deaf individuals, and the development of Africa as a continent, because Africa is a great, great continent that will never ever be conquered forever, will not ever be, totally defeated. It doesn't matter how how much foreign powers, try to kind of suppress, Africa remains resilient. And this is important. It's important for us to know and understand that our deaf communities also remain resilient and our sign languages remain resilient. It's important that we know that our sign languages remain resilient. And this is the Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices, brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. I'm going to see you here next week as we continue on this topic. Bye.